Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard Gramgrace deck profile for post-Minerva Rising. Gramgrace was one of the new Grade 3 units that gave us more options for many of the different decks, just like with Dark States, getting Baphometes, a more generic Dark States build that focuses on Grade 3s in the soul. Gramgrace is more of a Keter Sanctuary power deck that allows you to give your Persona Ride power to also your back row units. So a very awesome Persona Ride skill with this card, and then just having more power up for your units by choosing a card from your hand, and then being able to have that unit attack from the back row for multiple attacks. Like I said, it's more of a budget grade 3, but with more of the generic cards we have for Keter Sanctuary, it helps for a very consistent deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Ride deck, this is actually my buddy Anthony's build. He decided to stick with the Thagria line, at least for the Ride deck, with our grade 1 being Knight of Integrity. Thagria, just when wrote upon, if you want second, draw a card. Our grade 1 is Beneath the Brilliant Light Thagria. When wrote upon by Harsh Training Thagria, reveal the top card of your deck, and also if you reveal a grade 2 or less card, you may call it to Rear's Rest. So it's that setup that we need later on for Gramgrace, with our grade 2 being Harsh Training Thagria. Now it has to be wrote on with a grade 3 Thagria to gain the additional search. So sadly that's the one negative with this card, but it still sets up the grade 1 search, which makes it a very good Ride deck to rely on. And our grade 3 is Sword Saint Knight Dragon Gramgrace. With the copy we are running in the Ride deck, we are also running 3 additional copies in the main deck. Your Persona Ride also increases the power of your back row units, so that gives you, power to all the units on the field when you Persona Ride. And on the Vanguard Circle, once per turn, you can Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, choose a card from your hand, call it to your back row, center, rear guard, and until the end of this turn, you can attack from the back row and get plus 10,000 power. So really, really great for that additional attack. Otherwise, you just have 3 attacks to rely on, but with your back row also getting plus 10, if you Persona Rode with your Gramgrace, you'll have the back row unit also have just a plus 20,000 power. And at the end of the battle, your back row rear guard attacked, you put this unit into your soul and draw a card. So with that, you have more of an option for that card to also provide Soul Blast power for you to use the skill again the following turn, and giving you draw to have more of a defensive lineup ready to go against your opponent. For some of the other grade 3s, 2 copies of Relentless Dragon. Like I said, you had to go for more of a generic lineup for a good majority of this deck, just like Baphometes. And on rear guard, put this unit in your soul, look at the top card of your deck, and call it to rear or discard it. So more field setup using this card as well, or even just if you don't want to call it, which most of the time I don't see why you wouldn't, since we're running the majority of units in the deck, just another card to set up while still setting your soul up with Relentless Dragon also. For the grade 2s, running 4 copies of Knight of Rendering Flash Cabri. When it's placed on rear, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, reveal it, call it to rear if it is a grade 2 or less unit, and put it into your hand if it is not. So that can at least give you the Gramgrace into your hand if you reveal this card off of your Gramgrace, and then giving you an option to call that card out if it's a grade 2 or less onto the field for more field presence. The biggest thing with the Gramgrace deck is you want to have a full number of units on the field for you to use. Some of the other grade 2s that we run in the deck are 4 copies of Magic of Alteration Turnar. On rear, at the end of the battle, attack while boosted. If your damage zone is 3 or more face down cards, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. Now you will counterblast a lot with what we've mentioned so far. It's Gramgrace and Cabri, both having counterblast skills, so at least with Turnar, and also being able to put it into the soul and give you a countercharge can also make up for the fact that both of these cards also soul blast along with their counterblast. So you'll be able to use both of those resources again thanks to this 4 of card. And also, we are running 4 copies of Drilling Angel. When placed on rear, put a unit from your drop zone into your soul. Look at 3 cards from the top of your deck. Choose up to 1 card with the same name as a card from into your soul for this cost from among them, and call it to rear. More setup as long as you reach those consistent numbers. We do run a good number of variety for all of the cards we run in the deck, so you can rely on Drilling Angel for some good consistency as long as you have those same units in your soul, and choosing one of them for the same card name as one put into your soul for the cost among them. And we're also running 2 copies of Knight of Protective Spear, Arthen. In the front row, all your rear guards with different names from this card cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. And when this unit attacks, if you Persona Road this turn, it gets plus 5,000 to end of turn. So you can make Arthen one of the more, chosen cards to go into the back row rear guard slot for your Gramgrace to then be able to attack, because also if you Persona Road, it gets plus 5, it'll get plus 10 from when you call it, and also the plus 10 from the Gramgrace back row rear guard plus 10 as well, making it for a huge power of 35,000 if you didn't give it the trigger as well after you reveal it off of Gramgrace. And moving on now to the grade 1s, 4 copies of Painkiller Angel. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted, you can Soul Blast 1, retire, and draw 1 card. So it makes up for more cards on the field. Just like Gramgrace puts a unit into the soul to draw, you can at least use Painkiller Angel to Soul Blast, retire, and draw a card, giving you more cards in your hand for you to either call out the following turn or at least use to defend against your opponent. And then also running 3 copies of Knight of Gale, signed Bluger. During your turn, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 5,000 power. So even if this card has to be one of the units that you call to your back row center rear guard, you can have it get plus 5,000 power, and then the plus 10 from being the chosen card with your Gramgrace. And then also if you Persona Ride, that additional plus 10, making it 33,000 power. So it would still take at least more than 20,000 shield for your opponent to block this attack. And that's what we're really going with all the units. They either set up and replenish the resources that you need to go for into this deck, or they give you defense power in your hand, or they set up your field, or are used just for the power like our Persona Ride provides, and with Knight of Gale being more for the power boost during your turn if your opponent's Vanguard is a greater 3 or greater, which is very easy to meet if you even play this deck going second against your opponent. For the last of the grade 1s, we're running 3 copies of Palladium Zeal Dragon and 1 copy of Aegis Mare. The Aegis Mare can be the Elementaria Sanctitude if you want. We're just running a deck that does rely on having units in the drop zone with cards like Drilling Angel. So really having the lack or less blitz orders and normal orders in the deck, I would say the better to work with Gramgrace as well. But you could always put it in as just that one spot if you do have the blitz order to use. And then for the trigger lineup, we're going with the 7 critical. So 4 copies of Blade Feather Dragon and 3 copies of Daring Knight Saul. For just the added pressure, the soul building and power that Blade Feather Dragon can also provide. And for the next trigger, we're going with 4 draws for the additional shield and hand replenishing power that Protection Magic Perobi can give. And for the heals, we're going with the 4 copies of Healer of Heavenly Staff. You could run the ability heals if you have them. It's just going for more of a shield power reliance, because with the other ones you're going off of if your opponent does have a multiple attacker or a unit with an additional critical. With the last being the over trigger, Amartanoa, to give your rear guards drive checks as well. Can definitely be a scary pressure depending on what that rear guard has, because you also perform drive checks for your rear guard. So even if you have Gramgrace's power active, with that back row rear guard being able to attack, that means they'll also perform the drive check as well. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Once again, big thanks to my buddy Anthony for letting me borrow his Gramgrace deck. As we get more and more of these generic grade 3s, it definitely makes for some interesting deck profiles to provide for the D format. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.